Hello, my fellow seekers. Welcome to Into the Work, therapy for empaths, seekers, and the intuitively driven, where you have front row seats to therapy sessions and expert interviews that will help you define the important work that you're here to do. So I guess you actually have something better than front row seats. You practically have a seat on my couch. That's right, you will have unrestricted access to actual sessions with real people, exploring real life issues. You will continue to be inspired by powerful conversations with experts and healers that might just share exactly what it is that you need to hear to get unstuck. I am Michelle Pauverman. I am a recovering people pleaser and former anxiety-driven empath, turned now mostly grounded psychotherapist and intuitive coach. I have been helping people for almost 20 years manage their limiting beliefs and anxiety to finally stop the self-sabotage and step into their gifts. I created this podcast, Into the Work, to give you a place to learn more about yourself and give you actionable strategies to finally move those roadblocks holding you back so you can go for what you want. Above all else, my hope is that this podcast is a catalyst for your awakening. If you're listening, you've already taken a step towards getting off of autopilot, and our next steps together will be taken episode by episode, waking you up to the possibilities, the new ways of thinking and being, so that you can stretch into that next level of your story. The spark has already been lit, and my friend, this is a journey from spark to brilliance. So together, let's light a fire. Hey, Bethany, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Michelle, it's nice to be here.
How can I be helpful? Let's start there.
Well, I have recently gone through a breakup that was pretty traumatic, and I'm feeling stuck. And I just don't, I've gone through the motions. I've done as much healing as I think that I can, but I just need some way to get my mojo back, I think, so that I can start. I've tried going out and having some fun, and it works, but I just don't feel like I'm my old self yet. Like I don't really have the energy that I used to have.
Yeah, grieving can really do that to us. So it seems logically that we should be fine. We should be over something. We should be moved on. So why don't you tell me a little bit about you? Tell me a little bit about what might be helpful to hear around the situation. And is feeling stuck something that you've experienced previously? Is this something totally new?
This is something totally new. I usually
Yeah.
can wrap my head around it, process it, heal, and move on pretty quickly. And it takes me, depending on the situation, weeks to a month or so, but I'm going on probably like 3 months now, and I just don't have the energy to get up and go. And I've implemented walking, some exercise. I've tried to incorporate fun things to do with people that I love. Yeah, I don't really know what to say about that. If I think about what someone can say to make it better, I don't know that they can, but I'm wondering if there's something maybe I haven't processed yet.
Yeah, I think we're going to kind of fold back the layers today,
Okay.
right? So let's talk first about the situation that happened so I can understand the breakup itself, what happened, because this is really this is the like top layer of why this is happening. And then when we pull back the layers below the breakup, we'll see like what was triggered in it for you, what your deeper hurts are, what kind of deeper meaning you might be making of it that might be getting you really stuck and not free to move on yet. And so maybe just tell me a little bit about what happened.
Sure. So I have been dating somebody for 4 years. It was a very magnetic connection. And we were planning our lives together. We were planning our retirements together. We talked about marriage. And he has 3 children, and their mother passed away. So instead of him having them every other weekend, he has them full time now. And they come from a very compromised home. And not only are they grieving, they're also traumatized.
Mm.
So I
When
think
did his last wife pass?
she passed in May of last year.
Okay. So just a year
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. So they moved in June right after they finished up school, and it has been trying, and we used to be able to go and do things together a lot. He had a lot of free time. My children are older. So we had a lot of time to spend together, and
Mm.
that was cut down significantly, but we did the best we could. I mean, we did for the past year, we've been implementing date night and things like that. But because these kids are wounded, they tend to lash out. And there's been some very difficult situations for me because in my past, I've had traumatic situation. My ex-husband, and he wasn't kind, put it nicely. And
Would you say he was emotionally sort of abusive? Is that what we're getting
yes,
at?
definitely,
Any
definitely.
physical stuff?
No, no physical stuff,
Okay. Yeah.
but very angry and lashed out a lot.
Mm.
And so it triggered me. His kids tend to trigger me, so I would back off some. And I think he felt that, but he's very much an avoidant and wouldn't really discuss, or if I discussed it, it just kind of got old for him because he'd rather just kind of turn away from it. So it kind of blew up one day, and I said that I wasn't going to come over when the kids were home because I keep getting triggered, and I need to heal that. I need to heal something inside of me that is causing me to get triggered because it's just going to wind up in a really bad situation. And he basically said, well, my kids and I are a package, and that's it. And so he kind of ghosted me after that. So we had
Mm.
a brief conversation and then very spotty texts. So he didn't actually like break up with me. It was kind of ghosting me because he's an avoidant. And I kept trying to
Yeah.
have a conversation for some closure, and that just didn't happen. So here we
Mm.
are. That happened in March, maybe end of February, March, early March timeframe.
Mm.
So it's 3 months later, and I'm still hanging on to it for some reason. I logically I know that we can't be together because his kids have a long road ahead of them, and they haven't been seeing counseling. And so I encouraged him. That was part of the plan for me. I said, I won't be around them until they can get some help and can get a hold of themselves. And
Mm.
that just wasn't happening. And I think he's overwhelmed. He's got 3 kids, they're teenagers. And he
Oh,
doesn't know how he's never really been involved. Their mother never involved him with much with their upbringing. So he's starting with teenagers instead of babies, right? There's a big difference.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah.
very overwhelmed with the whole situation. I know that. So maybe that's it. It's my empathy too for the situation, but also knowing that it's just probably not something that is going to work. But it's heartbreaking
Yeah.
at the same time. It's tragic for everybody, for his
It's
kids.
tragic for
Yeah,
everybody. Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds pretty tragic. And so tell me a little bit about, well, you used the word I get triggered a lot. So tell me what that was like for you. I don't know why, but it just sounds like we have to go down there. So
Okay.
what did that
So
mean for you to get triggered by them?
deeply upsetting and wanting to instead of because you see he wasn't addressing the issues like when they were very mean to him saying horrible things to him. I did discuss it with him a few times. I said when you used to live at home and your mother would lash out at the little kids and you guys kind of stepped in because you knew that they needed to be protected. I said that's kind of what happens to me when you talk about your father that way because I love your father, and when you do that it hurts me, and so I'm trying to protect him. And I think they got it for a while. They were better with that, but then it just reels into situations where they have no emotional control and they're lashing out, whether they're crying or screaming or slamming doors or breaking things or I get really, really anxious. And sometimes I'll say things and I'll get upset, and I shouldn't be saying things. I shouldn't be involved, really, but he wasn't saying anything. And
What was it like? Because I'm differentiating here between your response to the kids who felt out of control. So the environment felt out of control.
yes,
It felt like unsafe, obviously. It
yes,
felt like you didn't know how it was going to go moment to moment.
right,
And that in itself can trigger somebody who's been in an environment before where they felt vulnerable to that, right?
right.
And I feel like I'm hearing for you just to getting some clarity on this just feels like the road we need to go, and then we'll kind of shift into now. But I feel like there's something in that was really, I know you feel abandoned right now.
Hmm.
How could you not, right?
Right,
And
right,
so, and you were abandoned by your previous husband, the person who was supposed to be a protector and love of your life.
right,
And then that was sort of, this is like the ginormous abandonment, but it sounds like previously in the relationship there was a lot of small abandonments that, and in his shoes, he had to choose between how he didn't know what to, it just sounds like he didn't have the skill set
right.
to articulate, communicate, and manage the situation. And so
Exactly.
what ended up happening is he shuts down in the
Hmm.
face of this, of their anger,
Yeah,
right? And rage. And you're shutting down in the face of anger and rage. The person, once again, who's your partner isn't your protector.
right.
He's not playing that role. So I can appreciate that there was maybe some abandonment going on there for you. Does that resonate? And
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
so now you're moving from this place. I'm just kind of drawing the picture here. So you're hurting, you're anxious. It sounds like anxiety, and I feel like for you anxiety was like the top-notch emotion, right? So you had a lot of anxiety of how this was going to work, projecting into the future, but
Right.
also a lot of anxiety of just being in the present moment and being around a lot of conflict.
Exactly. Yes.
And so when you had that conversation with him, were you prepared that this might be the end of the relationship, or where were you at when that happened?
When it all went down, I thought that we could talk about it. We did actually talk about it. And we had it, and he seemed on board with my plan to kind of, still be engaged with him as far as, date night, and to go out together, and but just not be around the kids. And he seemed on board, and we had a couple of great date nights after that. And then it wasn't until after those great nights that I asked him if he wanted to go out. And I said, all right, when I get to your driveway, I'll text you. And he said, he didn't say anything for hours. And I said, are you changing your mind about going out tonight? And he said, yes. If you can't come into the house because the kids are there, then yes, we can't go out to dinner. And so I waited a couple of days, and I reached out and said, I was expecting you to reach out to have a conversation, and that didn't happen. And I didn't hear anything for a week. And I said, hey, are we breaking up here? Like, I don't know. And we have communicated in the past like week or so. Still have stuff over there. I said, I think it would be better if we had a conversation about things. And he basically said, well, my kids have had a lot of trauma, and I can't put them through another trauma, which was me. Which
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm like, my reaction to the problem wasn't the problem. You need to address the problem, because otherwise it's manipulation, and you're manipulating me to a position where I don't have a say, I don't have a voice, and I don't have the authority to do anything. They're not my children. And crickets after that. I guess
Hmm.
I don't know if he's pondering that, but it was quite obvious that it was the last big scene was his oldest daughter exploding and swearing at me, and going off and getting out of the car, slamming the door, swearing some more. And I kind of lost it too. And then I left because I needed to get out of that situation. And so he was like, "Well, you blowing up, I can't have that." And I'm like, "Yeah, but And he says, and you being in a position before where you lived in a household like that, you should know that you shouldn't blow up at these kids. It's not their fault. I'm like, no, it is. At this point, it is, because they've been there a year and they're disrespecting me and you're not protecting me. And he didn't say anything to that because he really needs to step up and protect me, just like you said. And I told him that there was no protection from them. I'm just left there as a lamb. They can do what they will to me, but there's nobody there to say, hey, listen, that's not acceptable. You can't do that. I don't care how you're feeling or how, life was before, but this isn't acceptable. And that's what I was waiting for. And that just never happened. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it was obviously so complicated as these kids came in and changed everything. So the
Yeah.
relationship you had before, it
Yes.
was over,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
so the question is, could we do this new relationship? And so if we were really whittling it down, I think we would see that you're really grieving the old relationship. You're
Yeah.
really grieving the pre kids relationship before all that went down. It's
Right.
almost like a tsunami came into your lives and just
True.
wiped out what you knew,
Yeah.
changed the game completely. And in fairness to him as well, he's torn, he's feeling his kids' grief and his stuff, and he feels guilty because he has probably not been a part of their lives the way that maybe he's feeling. He's realizing now that,
Right.
and so perhaps this is the direction that, I always believe everything kind of unfolds exactly how it needs to, right? And
Right.
so I'm wondering for you if this is true, if it's possible that it's true, that everything is happening exactly, divinely exactly how it needs to. What is so important about all this for you? Why is it so important that this is happening right now for you? And I can imagine that's a difficult thing to answer because it's blowing
Yeah.
up your life as you knew it and your future.
Right.
And it's from the darkest crap that we go through that, and maybe sitting with that, you'll be able to start to open up to that creative thinking, to that creative flow, to be able to say, oh my gosh, I'm really feeling this now. But you just may not be there yet. And that's okay
Right.
too.
Well, I think I've moved in the direction of, okay, well, I have to plan for myself, obviously. I shouldn't depend on anybody for my future. I need to have a plan of my own. So I was working in that direction of,
What's that like for you?
well, it's kind of a realization that it's about time, I guess, that
Tell me
probably
more about that.
probably should have been doing that a long time ago rather than finding love and having a partnership. It doesn't seem to work out. Whether that's, I haven't healed enough, which I I I understand that. Basically being put into that situation, obviously, I'm not healed enough. So I needed
Tell me
to,
what healed enough means to you. What is it that you need to
well,
heal?
well, I guess the wounds, right? The inner child stuff, the loving myself enough, you know,
Mm.
stuff. And then the process of, okay, if I'm going to retire on my own, then I would like to buy a house, and well, what steps do I need to take? So then that leads into more job opportunities. I would need that. So I guess it's a little overwhelming, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's just acknowledge the rug just got pulled out from underneath you. And 3 months, by the way, not a long time.
Sure.
So let's just honor that you're exactly where you need to be right now, that you're right on time. This is your process. This is where you're supposed to be, exactly how you feel, exactly what's going on. This is where you're supposed to be. And in honoring that, I want to also acknowledge that you highlighted some inner child work and some inner wounds that still need to be healed. Now, listen, I will raise my hand, first person in the room, to say, this is my life. This is all of our lifelong work, right? Inner
True.
child work is something that gets finished. I'll
Yes.
be 90 still kind of looking at things. But that being said, I get the sense that you're also a seeker and you're also somebody that values that and you look within, but then I mean, you wanted to have the conversations. You weren't trying to run away. And so that really tells me a lot about you and about your ability to hold space and to show up. And so how are you doing that for yourself right now? And so what is that inner child work that needs to be done? What is it that let's hold the space for you right now? What is it that needs to heal right now? Can you articulate it at all?
Well, one of the things I did was try to feel where the pain was coming from, and in like having conversation with my inner child, I realized that because there was a time where I felt for weeks that I got kicked in the stomach. And that pain wasn't going away. So what I did was try to have a conversation with my inner child.
So you tried to have a conversation with your inner child.
I found out that my inner child was really in love with his inner child.
Oh, wow.
So once I realized that, I gave myself a hug. I
Mm,
apologized that I hadn't consulted and I hadn't given the space for that.
yeah.
And once I did that, the kick in the stomach was gone.
Oh, isn't that amazing? It's so crazy. Everybody, we all think on the surface level that we need to avoid, we need to keep pushing through, we need to keep moving on. And really, what we really need to do to feel better is to sit and feel. And it's so hard for us to do that. So that's amazing.
And still not through it, apparently. So
Oh, no. Can we back up a bit here? And I'm not going to go through your whole childhood, but we have one session. But
I know
I,
exactly where this is going.
yeah.
And yes, my my parents were absent a lot. Now, it isn't that I wasn't loved. I
Mhm.
definitely had loving parents. But, in the 70s and the 80s, parents, they sent their kids outside to deal with life.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so there was abandonment there. So it's obvious that because I felt like that as a child, that's what love feels like. My parents were not abusive. They were not,
Mhm.
they just weren't there for a lot of my childhood. I had two older brothers who tortured me, um, physically and mentally. And they were busy. They were working and they were, trying to get ahead, and it was a different generation. So, I'm as a mother, I'm more hands-on. I have conversations with my kids constantly because I didn't want them to feel like I felt.
Well, I really believe, and sometimes I think it's helpful to just bring this in. I really believe that before we all come down here, right?
Hmm.
We kind of like sign on to something, right? We sign on to a pact with these people, right? I'm going
Right.
to come down with these people right here because they're going to teach me the lessons I need to know. So that happens, right? And so your parents come down, they have their life with their parents, and then you come down. And I do believe that each generation is meant to rise above the next. So your parents probably rose above their parents, right?
Right.
And so you were rising because you're learning, oh, that sucked. I'm not doing
Right.
that, right?
Right. Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
your parents were probably stellar compared to their parents in ways.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
It's usually how it works. We're all meant to come down and grow past each other. We're all meant to learn the painful lessons as much as the good stuff and then grow beyond. And so you can just pat yourself on the back. You have grown beyond. You did the good things. And so here you are. But what I do here, I'm trying to just get a nugget on is just when you say childhood wounds or wounding for you,
Hmm.
it's primarily feeling like abandonment.
Yes.
But can we now kind of whittle that down to I sense that it's a little bit more around self-worth issues because usually when we find ourselves in relationships with people and now I'm talking about your
Hmm.
ex-husband, your
Yeah.
ex-husband
Yeah.
that somehow, right, when that love came at you there was something there's two ways. It's either very familiar so it actually is comfortable
Hmm.
or when someone is emotionally unavailable and not there for us and mean and not nice, then there's a self-worth issue in there. Like there's something that
Right.
says this is as good as it's going to get for me, or something. I mean, that's not the right words necessarily, but does that resonate with you?
It does. I think it started a spiral, but I don't necessarily think that myself worth. I mean, I felt pretty good before I met my husband, but of course, I've noticed that they don't typically start out with showing all of the traits that they're not honest,
Totally. Yes.
right? So I
Yes.
pride myself on being authentic from the get go. What you see is what you get, and you
Mm,
will get that
mm.
consistently. Because why would you do that, right? But there are people that are hurt out there that disguise their hurt and disguise things. My ex-husband had MS and he didn't tell me before we got married. And it wasn't until
Oh,
after I had my son that he said that he couldn't help me with anything because he had MS and that he had to put all his energy into just functioning and working. And from that point on, he was an athlete as a in high school and in college, and so he was very resentful and had a lot of trauma around his inability to function as he normally
mm.
had. And I had sought some counseling with a pastor at the time, and she said, she basically said, in God's eyes, you're free to go. You didn't do anything to deserve that, and he shouldn't have lied to you. But it started a whole, I was with him for 10 years. I forgave him because at that point we had two children, and I just didn't think I wanted to go at it alone. I was probably afraid of what would be next if we got divorced, and where would I go, what would I do, and all of that.
How long were you married for?
10 years. So
Okay.
yeah, so from that you know he he he, he did all kinds of things, tracked me, and he was I saw what he was doing to his ex. He had an ex-wife with a daughter too, which I'm I actually saw her yesterday. I'm very close with my daughter and now she has two children. So I'm very
Mm,
close to them. They're next weekend they're coming away with me.
mm.
So we're very, very close. But she doesn't speak to him. He abandoned them years ago, 12 years ago. He abandoned all
Oh,
of them.
wow.
And so I was very, in tune to that abandonment issue and wanted them
Mhm.
to feel as though it's not them. That MS changes your brain, and
Mm.
it I think that emotionally they're all doing pretty well. I am I have to say that they're doing okay. Not that they don't have issues from that. How can you not? But I think that for the most part they're pretty well adjusted kids. But
I just want to stop for a second and appreciate. So you got an opportunity to really show up for his, is it one kid or two or?
he had one with his ex and then two with me. So there's three.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you really went above and beyond to be able to really embrace this other child into your family and just provide the love that was needed and really show up and open up your heart. And here you are in your new situation, and how disappointing it would have felt that you didn't have that opportunity. Like I could see how you're like, no, I've done this. I can
I
do
know,
this.
right?
Yeah, like I can
I'm like,
show
I know
up.
the way. I know how to do this. I
Right?
can help you. But as
Yes.
an avoidant, he didn't. It just
Yeah.
seemed. Now looking back, right? It probably just seemed like nagging. What I was telling him was,
Hmm.
he's like, "No, you're looking at this all negatively," and I'm like, "No, I'm being a realist
Right.
because it gets messy. It gets dirty. It can go horribly wrong, or it can go really, really well, and it's all up to you and what your actions are in this moment."
Mm.
And he just was chugging along, wanting to work, wanting to just, do the bare minimum because he hasn't done the work, right? His
I
child is hurting inside. His
yes.
trauma from,
Yes.
yeah,
I honestly feel like it was all just too much for him.
yeah,
And he had to make a choice on like how much stimulus can I take right now?
right,
And these kids are pretty much it because
yeah,
I'm not going to abandon the children. So
right.
it really sounds like when it comes to the end of the day that he did not have it in him to put the energy and effort into the relationship any longer, that was
Yeah.
becoming tumultuous due to the kids, and also not having the emotional, I don't want to say he's not emotionally intelligent. I don't know him. That would be unfair, but I just sense that it's difficult for him to communicate around things.
Yes.
So that being said, here you are, and now you're sitting here like defeated because, and you tell me if that's the right word, but it just feels like there's a huge deflation,
Yeah.
not just because you're heartbroken, because I mean, these opportunities for love, they come, they don't come every day. So I
Right.
can appreciate for you that this felt so amazing to have found, and now it's not working. And so as it stopped working, it got more painful. And now you're looking at, oh my gosh, like I have to figure out the rest of my life without him because you were planning on spending it with him.
Right.
And it sounds like, I just want to acknowledge that sounds overwhelming a little bit, right? Like the comforts, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging like it's comfort. There is comfort in being with a partner. There's
Right.
comfort in having a partner when you move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to circle back to this too and bring this up and we can chat about this. But I also think it's, as much as that's true,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to go through being alone again in order to heal something that puts you back together to where you go next, who you're becoming next, is even more, even holds more in your heart, like breaking this, going through this breakup, going through this pain, coming out the other side of it is a becoming. It's a process of your spiritual growth, and it's painful. And coming out the other side of it, it doesn't mean it's all rainbows. It just means that you have a new perspective. You have a deeper way of seeing the world.
Mm-hmm. I do know that if I were to entertain a relationship in the future, I would have a bazillion questions. I know that this would be like an interview process of
Yeah.
how deep they can actually go. Like
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
how much healing have they done? How emotionally available they are. I mean,
Yeah.
there's like a whole, because life throws some pretty wild things at you that
Mhm.
you're not expecting out of left field, So
That is very
yeah,
true. That is like the roller coaster of
yeah.
life.
And if you're
And
gonna pick a
so,
partner to go with, then you
yes.
gotta make sure
Yes. No, that's a
that,
really accurate. I mean, that's a really good lesson to embrace, right? Is
yeah,
to
because you
sort of,
think one thing, but under pressure, a pressure cooker, how good are your communication skills? How committed are you? Do do you think that you know you can wake up every morning and choose this? Because some days it's difficult, and it it is easier to jump ship, right? So I don't know.
yes and no, right?
Yeah.
Yes and no. Being alone
Yeah.
in it isn't any easier for
No,
sure.
it's not.
It's
Definitely not.
not. And he'll figure that out. But
Yeah.
so, for you though, what's it like for you to believe in yourself, to know or trust? Because I think trust is an issue that must be coming up for you with others,
Yeah.
right? Trust in
Yeah.
others, because trust issues run deep, but
Yeah.
also with our wounds as we grow older and get more wounds.
Hmm.
But what's your trust with yourself like? What is it like for you to have to kind of conjure up that belief in yourself right now?
Gosh, see, this is the interesting thing. I've done it so many times,
Yep.
starting with my ex-husband, and then I went in, from the frying pan to the fryer because my ex was stalking me, and I was literally afraid. So I
Mm.
kind of got into another relationship quickly for almost, protection, which ended up almost worse than what I was in before. So, and then meeting a narcissist, well, not necessarily a full-on narcissist, but someone with narcissistic tendencies, but gave me enough of a place to heal, but
Mm.
enough to heal to know that he's a narcissist, and I needed to move on from that too. Yeah, it's been a road. So I mean, I trust my gut, I trust my instincts, and I trust myself to get myself back up. don't think trusting myself is not really something that's an issue. I mean, through the pain, through everything that I've been through. I mean, I've had my job for 22 years. I
Mm.
perform under pressure and under angst and under, so I really trust myself. I do. I don't know
I
that I
get
love
this.
myself as much as I should, but that's a different thing than trusting myself. I know that I got myself when I fall because that's all I've done
Mm.
is trust
So
myself.
I've got two avenues I want to go to right now, and I'm trying
Okay.
to choose which one to pick, right?
All
So,
right.
one, I want to make sure we talk about self love. That's really
Okay.
important here. So, we're going to do
Mhm.
that before we end today.
Okay.
The other piece I just want to acknowledge is that it does feel like you might have a high threshold for narcissism.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm
don't
not
think so
saying that
anymore.
I'm not, well, just hear me out.
Yeah.
Just hear me out. And I'm going to say narcissism is a very wide blanket.
Yes.
And to be frank, I don't know if you identify with being empathic or an empath or being a
I
sensitive
do.
soul.
Yeah.
We are like, we tend to be a little bit, it's almost like there's this magnetic wave between us and people who are a little narcissistic on the spectrum of narcissism, let's say.
Right. Yeah.
And, we tend to, when we're well, we tend to see people in their totality. So when we're looking at the narcissist, we're also looking at, but look at all these strengths and look at all these possibilities and look at all his potential and look at all these other wonderful qualities where someone else doesn't have that same, sensing and feeling of a person. So we
Right.
tend to be really quick to kind of jump into these relationships as little healers that we are.
Mhm.
And then until we get bombarded and finally our red flags go up and we've had enough, and hopefully and you've been able to get to that place multiple times. But it's not that when someone says, I have the abandonment moon for a long time in my life, right? And then I find love, and then that love ends up biting me back, and it's painful. Then it just kind of tells me that that's sort of an underlying thread of the healing work. And
Mhm.
then above that is also want to highlight all the amazing parts to you that really you might look back and say, how could I have done that for 10 years, right? But there was a parts of you that showed up and really protected you in those moments. There's parts of the ways that we haven't identified or talked about, but
Mhm.
there's parts of you that you may dislike or not love, but they are parts of you that are protecting you. They're trying to help you. And so I've imagined that a lot of that has gone on for you. You have a lot of strengths. You have a very strong, what's the word I'm looking for? Constitution. Like you just have a strong constitution.
Mhm.
And so one might even say, her? No way. No, she didn't ever. She's never been, she wouldn't take a narcissist for 5 minutes. But it's that, right? Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
a part, like the outside world sees you as like, no way, she wouldn't take that.
Right.
But because you're not just because you have a squishy heart, but because also I think this empathic tendency of yours also to kind of be a little healer, to be a helper, to show up and come in with your heart and heal is probably a purpose in your life in some way, right? That feels good. So when I talk about this, I want to just make sure it comes from the place of seeing you as a healer, as a helper, as a very strong person. So here you are. And I think you have a high threshold for it because if abandonment, I had 80s parents too. I was in the woods all day. I
Right.
had police officers taking me out of trees, seriously.
Yeah.
So, like, we were wild. It was different times. And yet, so here you are, and you do see love as, like, as having a certain threshold for how much someone's going to show up for you.
Mhm.
And I really wonder what it would be like for you to have this person come into your life who's just all about you and like just, I wonder if you'd be like, ew, it would be too much. But sometimes we have to make that adjustment into recognizing that we've been most comfortable with being the space holder, being the one who's the helper healer
Yeah.
versus being just that vulnerable in that. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think that I do pretty well with it because I think when oh, at least the people that I have been with that are on the spectrum of narcissism, they tend to love bomb in the beginning, so they are very
Yes.
present
Right.
and they're very adventurous and they're very, they present something that's different than what it ultimately ends up happening, right?
Yes.
All of a sudden you start getting breadcrumbs and yeah. And my threshold for that has been high, but I don't think it would be going forward. I think I would recognize it early enough on.
So can
Um,
you see that growth that you've made?
oh, definitely. I definitely can because as much as I go through it, I don't know that I've actually thought about it and then how to apply it to not have that happen again. Like, I don't think I made that leap. I think that I went through it and I healed myself, but I didn't have the skills to like prevent it from happening again. Like, or it shows up differently, right? I mean, certain people, they bring with them things that are very palatable and very likable and very lovable, and then it's a balance right now. When as an empath, you're like, well, nobody's perfect. So let's see what we and then when the scales start to tip in the position where it's just not, I think I'm a lot better now at saying, okay, I gotta let this go. I can't. I think with this last one though, I mean, we were committed to each other for life. So, in our minds and in our hearts. So it was me saying, well, I can't give this up because I've committed to this, right? And life happens, and who would I be if I just walked away? Same thing with the MS though, with my ex-husband. I was like, you know what? I committed to this, so
Mm,
I have to stick with it
yeah.
as long until it comes to the point where this is not healthy for anybody. And then
See, we have a really hard time mattering more than other people.
yeah,
Us empaths have a very hard time mattering more than other people.
yeah,
And it feels selfish and it doesn't feel good and you know,
hmm
and not to say that isn't how you feel or that is how you feel, but I wonder when now we're pulling onto the curb of self-love. I wonder if, mattering and mattering more kind of does take a lot of the self-love piece up. Not that we're going to be living our lives and I matter more all the time.
right,
It's just there are times where it's called for to
right,
matter more,
right.
right? And
Well, that
that's
that's a particular boundary that I put down this time, right? That I
mm,
had never put down before. I said I can't. I This is my line in the sand. I can't. I can't be around that. And we either have to work around it, and I'm willing to be creative with it, but I can't. I have to put myself first here.
that's amazing, right? Like, isn't that amazing that you see the
Yeah,
revolution of you that like,
I know, and I know that it matters, but God, that hurt.
mm,
That really hurt.
hmm
So,
totally.
is that
Yeah. It really hurt to say that and not have that person honor it and stick around for it,
right?
right?
Yeah, for sure.
So tell me a little bit about right now, not even your history, just like right now, when you say, I struggle with self love, what does that mean exactly to you?
Right now, I think that not feeling really good about what I've done. Like in the past, when I make it through the other side, I'm so joyful. I'm like so happy.
Mm,
That's not like that this time.
mm,
Like before, I'm like I've made it out of the weeds, and I go on with my life, and I'm super excited to be me again. This time doesn't actually feel like that.
yeah.
So I guess I'm still discovering what it is that makes me happy at this particular juncture. I don't think it's the same as when I was younger.
Yeah. And that is certainly something that's worth exploring. I wonder though if you could just open yourself up to loving yourself just as is right now. Like, not when you're happy, not when you're having a joyful day, not when you're finally feeling strong and vibrant and free.
Right. Yeah.
What's it like for you? Is there a block there for you to just say, I love and accept you right now in this funky, messy, shitty place?
Yeah, and I do, and I give myself the space, and I give myself the space to cry and let it all out, but I feel like I've been here a while. I guess that's where I feel stuck, is that I maybe I just don't see the end, and that's why. And that makes me, how they always say, it's okay to feel your feelings, just don't unpack there. I guess I'm really afraid of unpacking here. I don't want that.
Tell me about not seeing the end. What does that mean to you?
Of the hurt and not seeing the joy of every day,
Mm.
being engaged in life, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And also, I could see how, in a way, it's also like if we could correlate, and not that it necessarily is correlated, but I just want to kind of bring it in that you also don't know what to look forward to. You don't know what your future holds.
True.
You're still grieving what was and
Tr-
isn't any longer. And until you shift into creating the visual, at
mhm.
least, right? Being really attached to something else,
Yeah.
it's hard to move away from grief.
Yeah. Well, I think I've seen I know the steps that I need to take, and maybe it's just that's overwhelming too, right? Because the
Well, tell
house
me
market.
about that.
Well, the housing market, right? How am I going to do that on
Mm.
my own? How am I going to be able to afford a house on my own? Um, I need to take 2, 3 jobs,
Mm.
and I, I have a decent job. It's just what was possible before isn't now. Even rent, I think, it's like it's crazy. So
It
maybe
is crazy.
that yeah, maybe that's a piece of it, that maybe before I felt like I had maybe more options and more things, and I mean, but I do have a vision. It's just that it's uphill. It's uphill.
Yeah. Requires some energy, it sounds like.
A lot, yeah. Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of energy.
And so what it sounds like is you're saying, so what's important to me is that I want to buy a home.
Yeah, I do.
What else is it that you want?
Well, I'd like to find mature love. But that's I don't want to go online and do it. I don't want right. I want it to happen organically. So I went out and I bought paddle boards for the summer, and I bought a bicycle so that I can, have some fun that way. My family has a place in the mountains, so I can go to the mountains as much as I want this summer. So I have a plan
Mm.
to have fun. And I also have my long-term goal of saving enough money so that I can buy a house. That just takes time. So I do have those things out there. And I look forward to, I've had a couple of adventures where I just said, you know what, I'm just going to go out. The other weekend I went and climbed a mountain and met some really interesting people along the way. And then over on Friday, I went to the beach and then went to an oyster house afterwards and met some more interesting people. So I think I just need to keep doing that as I have the capacity to do that, because that takes a lot too, to venture out into places and do things that on my own that I've never done alone before. But I think it's worth it because I have met some really truly interesting characters.
You have an adventurous soul.
I do.
You're an adventurer.
I am.
So, can I even acknowledge for a moment that for you, but I think for some of my adventurous souls who have a ton of energy, want to get out there in life, depression can almost feel heavier because it is such it's such a shift from the high voltage of like excitement and energy and let's go do this and let's go do that and get out in the world and try new things. And when you lose your senses for that, right? Your drive, your excitement, but also just like when you lose a little bit of that, as you call the mojo,
Yep.
I bet that feels so starkly different than how you operate generally.
It is, for sure, because I'm usually very excited about all kinds of things, whether that's an eclipse or full moon, doesn't matter. Just, I like to get out there for sure and do a lot of different things.
I also hear that you're doing them anyways,
I am.
which is
I'm
amazing.
yeah, because I'm trying to retrain my brain to I'm trying to retrain my brain to not be stuck. That's my attempt to not be stuck. When I meet people and do things, that's fun.
So can I ask you, when you're meeting people and doing things,
Hmm.
are you having fun in the moment and then just feel kind of low and shitty later?
Yes.
Or,
Yeah,
okay.
I am
So
having
can
fun.
we just also acknowledge that? I think it's an important hook for you for your brain to hear that you are capable of having fun and meeting people and doing things and engaging. And it's just going back home, maybe.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's part of the reason why I want a home of my own, is my own space, because after my divorce, I my mother had passed away of cancer, and my father was struggling, and I ended up moving in to my father's house because he definitely has a room and he couldn't take care of it himself. He was struggling after my mother
Mm.
passing. And so I was running two households and it was becoming overwhelming and difficult. So I think it was best for the both of us, and it worked out really well for a lot of years because I was able to not have to take care of two households. And it also gives me a place of security as well. But now I have a different perspective on it. I feel kind of closed in, that I don't have, this is his house and his spaces.
Mhm.
And that was another realization, that, I really need my own space.
Yes.
And he's capable. It isn't
So,
as if he's not capable. I think this house is overwhelming for him as well, but I think that also I'm being a little bit taken advantage of because I pay for a lot and I do a lot,
mm,
and I don't feel like I have my own space, which is a problem for me mentally, that I'm putting so much
mhm.
effort into one thing and not having my own space to be able to
Yeah.
be creative. I love to decorate. I love to
Mhm.
create spaces, and I just can't for the past 10 years. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, I got to tell you that as you're sharing this, I realize we're like kind of coming to the end here. So I want to make sure
Okay.
I say
Sure.
this. This sounds so important.
It is.
This sounds like a massive piece of the puzzle. I just want to tell you energetically, as I'm with you, talking with you about it, it really feels ginormous. That for
Yeah,
you to really feel alive again, for you to really turn back on, you need to get into your own place
I do.
and find how that you can do that in a way that works for you. And I want you to try to, I want you to watch your thinking. I want you to watch the thoughts that you say to yourself that are, I can't do this. What am I going to work 3 jobs? What could I possibly afford? And I want you to say, what do I need to do? How do I make this happen? Those are the type of questions I want, not how could I possibly do this? Because those are all just pummeling your energy field and your energetic self that is already exhausted. It doesn't need that. That doesn't actually help you or serve you in any way. And so to just help train your brain, I heard that. Stop. Nope. Delete. I don't do that anymore. I don't do I can'ts. I don't do I can'ts. They don't exist. I don't do them anymore. And I want you to just acknowledge, I can do this. Of course I can do this. I can do anything. I've proven to myself, you said it out loud before.
Yep.
You know that you are an ass kicker. When you want to be, you are an ass
Sure.
kicker and you can make this happen. And then I want you to open yourself up, talk to the universe, say, "Hey, I want a house." Start
Okay.
showing me what's possible.
Okay.
I'm not accepting what's not possible. That's not a possibility in my world. You absolutely will find a home of your own or whatever that ends up looking like.
Yeah.
Maybe start being flexible on what that looks like.
Yeah.
But this feels ginormous. This
Yeah.
feels like, I know that the heartbreak is everything and that's how it feels, but I don't know, as I'm talking with you now, this feels like, oh, and I'm hearing it, like the change she's seeking is
Mhm.
going to happen when she gets out of that house.
Yeah. You're right. You're 100% right.
Like everything you want,
Hmm.
you're going to be fine as soon as you get out of that house.
Yeah.
And then you're going to start this is all like, not to get super energetic, but this is all first chakra issues. So belonging, security, that all funnel, all that safety, that ownership, financial belonging, and safety and security, as well as like just your creative flow is getting blocked.
Right.
Like your creativity, your sense of like joy and wonder, and how you can create this space for yourself and then live in the space that you create for yourself is really important for you,
Hmm.
more so than maybe others. So it's time for you to start shifting away from, because this is what happens with breakups and pain of any sort, right? It pushes us into like our hibernation, our poor me, our feelings of like helplessness, because we don't have the energy. So we feel like we can't even do it because we're hurting.
Hmm.
And I want to just acknowledge this small shift that can happen. We can't change what happened. We're not going to change the grief and the hardship just yet. That is a process all of its own. But
Hmm.
where you can funnel and focus your energy is, how do I shift my thinking? How do I shift believing in myself and get out of this house?
Yeah.
Like, does that make sense?
Definitely. Definitely. 100%.
Can you feel something percolating in you when you think of moving out?
Yes. Yes. And it is something that I've been working on, yeah, for sure. But I think I do. I need to flip the script to, you know, asking the universe to provide me guidance and answers, to get it done, and not say that I can't. I just need to put it out there and let it come to me.
It really does seem like a really big deal. And it just seems like there's like a double whammy happening here that's just really hard. And for you to sort of pick up and feel the feelings you want to have, it feels super important for you to start being able to harness some of the hope and belief up about moving out. Does that
Yeah.
feel right?
Yeah. 100%. It does. I've been contemplating that for a while. Yeah, because there's another situation too that had kind of brought that to a head, and I recognized right away that it was time. You know,
Yeah.
I definitely feel like
It
it's time.
feels like it. It feels like it's time. And when it's time, that just means shit happens when it's time.
Yeah.
So I want you to try to like have, right? Like it
Hmm.
just have faith that there's an opportunity that's going to present itself to you. And I want you just to start getting ready for it and start planning on it, start looking for it, like really with flexibility. It might be like it's a
Right.
2-step process to get where you're going, but that it isn't like, I mean, like there might be something that comes to you first, and then you get into the dream place. But I also foresee another relationship in your life, but I just sense for you that's just what's could be in the cards for you. So
Yeah.
right now, it feels though that part of your lesson though is to build this life now in here on your own, and
Yeah.
then bringing that person in a different way, and that you getting out of that house, it's all going to work out in the sense of when when and if you were to meet somebody else, it's all going to work out in
Yeah.
terms of this new place. So yeah, so I don't know if that instills a little hope.
It does. I mean,
I
it's confirmation for sure for what I already, intuitively
when
kind
it's
of know.
time and you can start feeling the shift of it, like you start to feel like this has to happen, like there's a
Yeah.
pressure that starts happening.
Yeah.
And bad things at home need to happen for you to get the hell out, right? Like sometimes we just need to get kicked in the butt, right? And
Yeah.
so just open yourself up to the possibilities. Start just saying, well, how do I make it happen, instead of
Right.
this can't, what's gonna, you know what I mean? I want you to say, how do I make it happen, even if it looks a little different at first.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, Bethany. I
Oh,
hope
well,
this was
thank you.
somewhat helpful for you.
Definitely was. Thank you so much. I
Well,
appreciate your time.
thank you. Thank you for listening to Into the Work Therapy for Empaths and Seekers. Don't forget to grab your free gift, your Shadow Work Transformation Bundle at michellepoverman.com. I've included everything you need to get started to break through the patterns of self-sabotage and finally start to heal the parts of yourself that are getting in the way of truly reaching your potential. From a powerful meditation designed to help you meet and embrace your shadow self, to the guide that's full of curated prompts and important questions to support you on this journey. This really can be the work for you to unmask the root cause of all the issues you've been experiencing, honestly, and start to feel free to believe in yourself and go for what you want. The link for this free bundle is in the show notes. And if you like this episode, I would be so grateful if you could take a moment and rate, click and follow, and leave a review. Of course, you can always follow me on socials at Michelle Poverman. And keep in mind, as you embark on your journey from spark to brilliance, remember, the universe is always conspiring in favor of your awakening. Everything that's happening is in support of you lighting your own fire within. So until we meet again, may your path be well lit and your heart be guided. Shine bright, seekers. Until next time.